right, thanks so much for joining. So today we're going to be going over tennisrecord.com. Before we start, I wanted to point out that this is the first of many videos on my new YouTube channel. I will also be starting a podcast, Tennis 101 Explained by a Whip or a Work-in-Progress Player. I feel like a lot of times the tennis pros forget what it's like to be sort of a newbie. I've been playing for a few years now, and I do still feel like I remember what it was like to be a newbie and hearing all these terms and not knowing what they were. You know, people referring to tennis record but not really understanding what I was looking at. So I'm really going to go through and sort of explain all of those things and talk about those topics. All right, so we'll start off by talking about what tennis record is and then talk about what it isn't. So tennis record is an amazing free tool that you can use to get sort of a snapshot of a player in the middle of a season. So it is a dynamic rating that changes after each match is played. Okay, so it's a really great tool for captains or for players if you're going up against a team and you maybe want to see who might be playing line 1 or 2 versus line 3 or 4. It's also a really useful tool if you get bageled or if you lose 6-0, 6-0 to go on and take a look and see, you know, oh, well, that player has a 90% win rate and they're probably going to move up next year because their dynamic rating is above what their current level is, right? So lots of different uses for it. So going through here, really the only link you will need to know is the player search. You can get all the player ratings from the player search. This is just kind of a lot of noise. You can get particular team information from the player search, same with the league information. So really player search is the only link you really need to know on tennis record. Talks a little bit about the algorithm. Again, it is a dynamic rating based on the matches and the games won. So the rating systems, I've never seen anyone actually rated a 2.0. I think everyone starts at a 2.5. But if you see a dynamic score on tennis record of a 1.5, and I actually have seen players that are, you know, 1.6, 1.7, even 1.5. So if you see a 1.5 to a 2.5, that player is a 2.5 player. If you see someone between a 2.5 and a 3.0, they are a 3.0 player. 3.0 and 3.5, they're a 3.5 player. So at the beginning of each season, the players will have a rating. Let's say they're computer rated 3.5, they'll have a rating in between these numbers. Now, as the season goes on, you might see a computer rated 3.0, especially at the end of the season. You might see a computer rated 3.0 that has a dynamic tennis record rating of a 3.16. All that means is they're playing at a 3.5 level. They're playing higher than their 3.0 level, and they will more than likely move up the next year, but we'll talk about that at the end of the video. Now, these are really important because you are going to be seeing these, and they mean very, very different things. Okay, if you see someone with a 3.0A next to their name, the A means they either appealed up or appealed down. So let's say somebody is moved up from a 2.5 to a 3.0, and they're a low 3.0, and then they get injured, and they don't play for 3 or 4 years. They can come back and tell USTA, I know you have me at a 3.0, but I want to appeal down. I actually think I'm a 2.5 because I had just moved up to a 3.0. I got hurt. I haven't played in 4 years. And USTA a lot of times will say, yeah, okay, we will appeal you down. So then their new rating will be 2.5A. Okay? Key is you don't know if somebody appealed up or appealed down, so you would need to take a look at their prior season to figure out if they appealed up or appealed down, because you can also appeal up. This actually happened to a woman on one of my teams where she started off as a self-rated 2.5, absolutely just loved the game of tennis. It's very easy as a self-rated player to move up your first year to the next level. Once you're a computer-rated player and you move up, it is very difficult to move up to the next level in 1 year. Extremely difficult because you start at the bottom versus self-rated, you start at the top. So she killed it at the 3.0 level her first year as a 3.0, but USTA and the NTRP rating said, nope, we're going to keep you as a 3.0. So she clicked on the appeal button when ratings came out in December, and she appealed up and said, no, I want to play at the 3.5 level. And USTA looked at it and said, yep, you're playing well enough. We will grant that. So she now has a 3.5A, and she appealed up to become a 3.5. Benchmark, I've never seen someone with a benchmark, but it's if you make it to sectionals and nationals as, I think, a self-rated player, but I've honestly made it to sectionals pretty much every year that I've played, and I've never had a B next to my name. But it basically just means that they made it to sectionals or nationals. But again, I've never seen that. Computer rated. You will see this more often than not. Computer rated means you have been playing for at least one full season and your NTRP rating is locked. You cannot become disqualified if you have a computer rating. And we'll talk about disqualified next. Okay, so again, computer rated is you have played at least 3 matches at either the level below or your current level, and USTA said, no, you should be at this level, and you are locked in at that level for a full year. Now, if you are a self-rated player, down here, which we'll talk about later, if you are a self-rated player, you can become disqualified, and you can become disqualified in 2 different ways. The first of which is a strikeout. So if you, let's say, and I know somebody this happened to, she got struck out. She had been playing tennis pretty much her whole life, and she self-rated as a 3.0. And she played a number of matches, and the interesting thing is she played in the 40-plus season, didn't get struck out, and then in the 18-plus season, she had this 3rd match, and it struck her out. So what happened was for 3 particular matches, USTA has an algorithm, and it'll say this should be about the outcome of the match. And she did far better than what USTA projected the outcome to be. So for instance, she was playing another 3-0 player, and maybe she was supposed to win 6-4, 6-4. That would have been acceptable, but she won 6-0, 6-0. That was her first strike. And actually, when the captain got the email, she actually saw exactly which matches struck her out, which matches she did far better than what was expected based on the USTA algorithm. And it's 3 strikes and you're out. And this automatically runs. Apparently, it's a report or it's an algorithm that runs on a regular basis, a weekly basis, and it checks to see if you are doing far better than you are expected to be as a self-rated player. So the strikeout is the first way to become disqualified. And what happens is she was self-rated as a 3-0. The second she got struck out, her USTA rating was in red, 3.0, and then there was a 3.5 next to her name and a D. And then in tennis record, you would see 3.5D, meaning she's now a 3.5. She was disqualified at the 3-0 level. Okay. The other way that you can become disqualified is a grievance. I also saw this, where it was a player that self-rated as a 2.5. First 3 matches she played, she won 6-0, 6-1, or 6-0, 6-0, and I think 1 was a retire, so she didn't finish the match. She didn't get struck out yet because 1 was a retired match. And in my podcast, I'll talk a little bit more about the strikeouts because it does have to be against computer-rated players. But she started playing at the 3-0 level, and she was killing it at the 3-0 level. And there was a grievance filed against her, meaning another captain wrote into USTA and said, I would like to make a formal complaint or a formal grievance against this player. I don't believe she's playing at her current level. She's playing far beyond it, and she should be moved up to a 3.0. She's not playing at a 2.5 level. And USTA went ahead and looked at that, looked at how she's been playing, who she's been playing against, and determined, yep, you're right. She's not playing at her level. And that's called a grievance disqualification. So it's the same thing as a strikeout. In USTA, next to her name, it was a great big red next to the 2.5, and then in black it was a 3.0, and it had a D next to her name. And in tennis record it had 3.0 and then a D. Early start, I've also never seen this. Apparently there's some leagues that you can join before the official season starts. That's what those are. Mixed, you will see this. So mixed is male-female. Mixed matches do not count against your NTRP rating unless the only thing you play is mixed. If the only matches you play are mixed matches, then you will have a tennis record rating and it will have an M next to it. Okay, but if you play mixed matches, but you also play 18 plus matches, you play 40 plus matches, then those are just mixed matches. You won't have an M next to your name. So the only time you'll have an M next to your name is if somebody only plays mixed, and I have seen that. Self-rated players or an S next to the name. Oh boy, these people scare me. More often than not, self-rated players will be far better than what their rating are. I have seen it the opposite direction where someone self-rates as a 3.0 and they're really a 2.5. But more often than not, people will try to underrate themselves so they can obviously come out gangbusters and come out and have a winning season and get their team to sectionals and possibly nationals. So self-rated players really scare me, but self-rated players can become disqualified, which is good. But if you see an S next to their name, they will have an X next to their name for the entire first year. After they have played 3 matches against computer-rated players, the next year they play, they will have a C next to their name and they will be computer-rated. And then T is for people that play tournaments. All right, so let's go ahead and do a player search. Again, this is really the only link you'll need. Let's go ahead and do a search for Sally Witt. The other nice thing about this is you don't have to know the full name. You could just do Sally W-I or W-I-T, and it will bring up all of the names. So you don't have to have the full name, which is kind of nice, especially if you can't read the spelling off of a scorecard or something like that. If you come close, you can still look them up. So the Sally that I know lives in Bellevue, Washington, and we can see that she's a female, and we can see that she is a 3.0 computer-rated player, okay? We can see her estimated dynamic rating. This is the tennis record rating, is a 2.73, okay? The 2.73 means she is a very solid 3.0 player. She's probably not going to move up to 3.5 next year. She's probably not going to move down to 2.5 next year. She is a very solid 3.0 player. We'll talk about projected end of year rating at the end of the video. But we can see all of the teams that she's on. And if you remember, I said you don't need to worry about team search because you can look up a player and then click on a particular team. Again, 18 plus, 40 plus, and you can see all the different players and all of their rankings. And this is really useful as a captain if you want to take a look at teams you're going to be playing. You can kind of see who's more than likely going to be playing line 1 versus line 2 versus line 3, and kind of take a look at their records, if they play singles, doubles, so on and so forth. So very useful tool, being able to take a look at the team. You obviously can take a look at just the adult leagues, the 40 plus, the singles, the doubles. But really what I typically do when I'm looking at a player is I'll look at their most recent matches. But you can get 9 years worth of history. It does give you 9 years worth of matches. Okay, so match history for 2022. Again, we know Sally's a very solid, strong 3.0 player. What this is over here is this is the dynamic rating. So this top rating should be the same as this rating always. Okay, this is going to change based on each individual match played. Okay, starting with the very first match of the season. So let's just say here on 4-8, she played an 18 plus. She played with a partner that was ranked a 2.80, and this is her dynamic rating. She played against somebody who was a 2.73 and a 2.62. So they definitely should have won, and they did win. So she ended up moving, because she won 6-4, 6-0. She got a bagel in the second set. She moved from a 2.66 to a 2.72. This is her new dynamic rating. Okay. The very next match, she played with somebody who was a 2.47. She played against somebody who was a 2.73, a 2.83, and they did end up losing. They lost in 2 sets. So her rating did drop a little bit, right? The next rating is she won. Again, you can see what her partner's rating is, who they played against, and then you can see the ratings. But you can kind of see the ratings go up and down based on each match that they play. Okay. The interesting thing too is that sometimes you can have a loss, but your rating will still go up. And so for here, for instance, she went from a 2.65 to a 2.66. Even though she lost, her rating went up. That's because she played against somebody who was a 2.93. And so they didn't expect it to be as close as it was with that 7-5 win, right? So it matters on how many games you get, and that is the exact same way that USTA calculates their NTRP scores. So let's say you are a 3.0 playing on a 3.5 team, and let's say you're playing against really good 3-5 players, and you end up getting, you lose, but you lose 6-4, 6-4. Your NTRP rating and your tennis record rating will still go up because you got more games than you were supposed to get. That's kind of how the algorithm works. Okay. And then really quickly, taking a look at the projected end of year rating. One thing tennis record is not a very good projection of who will be or will not be moving up. It is completely separate from USTA and NTRP ratings. And I want to make that very clear because my first full year as a 3.0, and again, my first full year got cut short because of COVID, so my first actual full year as a 3.0, tennis record had a little green arrow moving up, and it said this player is projected to move up to the next level, or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it said, but there was a little green arrow that said I should be moving up to a 3.5 that year. I believe I was a 2.98 if I remember correctly, and I did not move up at the end of the year. There was another lady on our team who I believe was rated a 2.89. Tennis record did not have the green arrow. Tennis record did not project she would move up to a 3.5, and she did move up to a 3.5. And there was another lady that was 2.78, I believe, or a 2.79, and she also moved up. Tennis record did not project they were going to move up. So tennis record is not a really great indicator of who's going to move up to the next NTRP level, but it is a very good indication of how well somebody is playing. Okay, and again, I would like to point out, and I'll have a podcast talk on the NTRP ratings based on my experience, of course, because I am not a tennis pro, nor do I work for USTA, but based on what I've seen and talking to pros, it is very difficult to move as a computer-rated player, as a new 3.0, from 3.0 to 3.5 in 1 year. It usually takes a minimum of 2 years. But, again, we can, I'll definitely be discussing that and a lot of other topics on my podcast. So again, I talked about sort of the player ratings is the one that you're really going to not necessarily need, because it talks about all the players' ratings for a particular region, such as like Diablo South or Bellevue. It's just a lot of players, and it goes everybody from, I believe, 5.5 down, or if you have any tennis pros, I believe the tennis pros will even be in there. The player search is what you're primarily going to be using. Team search you don't really need, and again, for those of you that didn't look, I actually just clicked on view advanced player stats. There's just a couple fun sort of things to look in here. Then again, find a league you won't ever need. So taking a look at the view advanced player stats, it's just kind of fun to take a look at their overall records, their winning streaks, their losing streaks, how many tie breaks they've won. Again, could be useful if you're going to be playing against somebody, especially in sectionals or nationals, to take a look at those teams and see how they do in the tie breaks. You can see how many bagels and double bagels, and for those newbies, a bagel is if you win 6-0, if you win 6-0, that's a bagel. A double bagel is if you win 6-0, 6-0. A bagel and a breadstick is if you win 6-0, 6-1. And then a double breadstick is if you win 6-1, 6-1. So it's just kind of fun, and it actually talks about all of these as well. But that is sort of the gist of tennis record. I'm going to have another video showing captains how they can use tennis record to help with their lineups at the beginning of the season, to know where and which teams are going to require sort of a stronger lineup and which teams require sort of a weaker lineup. And then I will do a third video on when you make it to sectionals, how you can use tennis record to look up the teams and the rosters that you're going to be playing, so you know who you're going to be playing against, and once again you can strategically line up your team. Please like this video. Please subscribe to my videos. And once I get my podcast up and running, I will be plugging that in on some of my videos as well. I hope you enjoyed this, and thanks so much for joining.